Hey guys, it's KJ from the Scariest Movie Ever channel on YouTube. We truly are living in the apocalypse. This is a time where we're given lots of revelations. Over the last few years, there have been many stories coming out that are proving the history of the Bible. And many of these new discoveries are fantastic and amazing. But some of them are hinting at a much darker side to the history of humanity. The proof of the legendary fallen angels, and the proof that they mingled with human beings and created a whole new race, is coming out in some very interesting ways. Here's a story from July 24th. 6 recent archaeological discoveries affirm details in Scripture. We also have this story here from June 11th, 2019. Ancient artifacts found in Israel prove the Bible is true. Here's a story from June 9th, 2018, 3,000-year-old sculpture of mystery biblical king found in Israel. Just a few years ago, this story came out. Archaeologists discover colossal 3,000-year-old statue in vacant lot in Cairo. The ancient statue is 26 feet tall and once was part of a temple to the sun god. So when you look into the occult and the esoteric, and the Freemasons and other secret societies, we always find the sun god. The sun god is yet another reference to Lucifer. And there are many secret societies that worship the sun god. In the article, they believe this statue likely depicted the Pharaoh Ramses II, and that connects us back to Moses and the Bible. So I find it interesting that we're living in a time where we're seeing a resurgence of sun god worship in many ways. We're seeing a resurgence of pagan religions, pagan rituals, even witchcraft is on the rise. So as all of this unfolds around us, we find this statue representing the sun god rising from the pit. That story made me think back to this one, the stone head of Guatemala that history wants to forget. To this day, nobody knows exactly how this statue got into Guatemala or who or what it actually represents. But the fingerprints of the fallen angels are all around us. It's interesting that so many times these statues are representing the giants. And we find these statues all around the world. It was in 1938 where the Olmec colossal head statues were first discovered in Mexico. And as with the colossal head statue in Guatemala, to this day, nobody knows exactly how these statues got to Mexico, who created them, or when they were actually created. So as I said before, I believe we're living in a time of great revelation. And we know in this life that everything works in cycles. So metaphorically, I continue to find these stories of the giants rising from the pit. Here's another example from not long ago. The heads of Easter Island have bodies which have been covered up by landslides. So we see this story connecting to the others, the giant heads, the representation of the giants. And now we find these giants are being unearthed. They're coming out of the pit. I've covered this movie in several videos in the past. The ancient aliens, the alien engineers, are actually the fallen angels. And in the beginning of the film, you see them trying to mingle themselves with humanity, mingle their line with ours. So it's interesting we find all of these massive head or colossal statues all around the world, or these titans, or these fallen ones. And we find the same thing in Prometheus, because it's telling us the same story. So we're seeing the fallen ones rise again in many ways, even through entertainment. So that takes us to this story here from August 2015. Archaeologists find the gates to Goliath's hometown. Goliath was a hybrid. He was a giant written about in the Bible. And as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of this biblical truth come to light over the last few years through history, through archaeology. And once again, we find the rise of the giants with this story here. The gate to Goliath's hometown has been discovered. And that brings us to this story from July 24th, 2019. This is just about a week ago or so. Goliath's true hometown found. Lost 3,000-year-old Philistine city emerges beneath Gath. Massive fortifications hidden beneath previously excavated settlement in southern Israel may have inspired biblical traditions about Goliath and other hulks. Another story indicating the rise of the giants, the return of the Nephilim. So I believe that throughout history, these fallen angels have come in many forms. Shapeshifters. And the evidence or fingerprints of these beings, once again, is all around us. We've seen that connection with aliens and Prometheus and the fallen ones, and now we have this story here. From 2018, newfound artifacts may prove aliens visited Mexico 5,000 years ago. This ancient sculpture seems to depict a ritual event. Beings in art can be humanoid in structure, but they are certainly not human. And here's just a few more of the artifacts that were discovered. And of course, these look like your traditional gray aliens. Movies, television, entertainment in general is a major propaganda machine. We are constantly being programmed and imprinted with the ideas that the hidden controllers, if you will, want us to have. But if we only look between the lines sometimes and just beneath the surface, I believe we find the truth. So when it comes to the gray aliens, let's not forget how we were programmed through the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In this film, humanity makes first contact with the gray aliens, at least on a global level. And make no mistake, it's no accident that this first contact with the so-called gray aliens happened in a place called the Devil's Tower. Now here's another story that's just come up over the last few years. 7,000-year-old, quote, reptilian statues discovered in Mesopotamia. So here you can see some of these statues, and reading from the article, the Ubaidian culture in Mesopotamia is believed to date back to around 4,000 and 5,500 BC. Strangely, just as with the Sumerians, the origin of the Ubaidian culture remains a profound mystery for modern-day scholars. It's as if these ancient cultures came into existence from one day to the other. So again, we find the same narrative in this story. Nobody seems to really know exactly where these things came from and what exactly they were trying to signify. Some of you may remember the story of the Arch of Baal, also known as the Arch of Palmyra, and that's how they tried to sell it to the public, of course, but it was reconstructed at the Capitol Mall in Washington, D.C. a while back. Even here it says allowing spectators to marvel in the pagan false god of power, fertility, and child sacrifice worshipped by the apostate Queen Jezebel of the Bible and the ancient Phoenicians and Canaanites. So here's a little bit from the article on stream.org written by Nancy Flory. Baal was a Canaanite god in Old Testament times. The Israelites grieved God by turning from him and worshiping Baal, creating idols, participating in sexual immorality, and sacrificing their children to the pagan deity. The Israelites' unfaithfulness to God even after he brought them out of Egypt incensed the Lord, and on many occasions he gave them over to their enemies. It was their unfaithfulness and Baal worship that ultimately led to their captivity and displacement as a nation. This was literally seen as people leaving our reality, walking through the arch, through the portal, into another dimension, to sacrifice their children, to partake in ritual sacrifice, of course, sexual immorality, and everything else that went with this. So it's very interesting when you look at the dates and locations of when these arches were being created. We find a very clear connection to the globalists. For instance, in London, the first arch was erected in London in March of 2016 on Earth Day. as part of UNESCO's World Heritage Week, since climate change is a tool to institute a single world government. Earth Day, of course, holds a very special significance. And here's another connection I find very interesting. In Italy, the arch was unveiled in Florence, Italy, just in time for the G7 conference, yet another globalist conference. Italy was simultaneously showcasing art from ancient Babylon, interestingly enough. Some art honored Nimrod, who is the motivating force behind building the Tower of Babel and represents rebellion against God. By peering through the arch, a sculpture of Poseidon could be seen in the distance. Another Titan, right? Another fallen one. It appeared as if Poseidon, who was associated with Nimrod, was entering the arch. We also had this story: the Temple of Baal replica arrives in London just in time for ancient pagan festival. As I mentioned before, we're seeing a resurgence of these pagan rituals, these pagan beliefs. Satanism, paganism, worshipping of the sun god, the return of the giants. April 19th is not a meaningful date to most, but to occultists and worshippers of Baal, it is a most auspicious time. Halfway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, it marked the first day of summer in ancient times, initiating a 13-day period known in the occult as the blood sacrifice to the beast. This period culminates in Beltane, the major festival for the worship of Baal, or, as it's known in the Western world, May Day. And one more example when it comes to these arches of Baal. World Government Summit enjoys Baal's blessing. Of course, we're going to find one of these archways showing up at the World Government Summit. The World Government Summit was particularly blessed with the Arch of Baal being erected in celebration of the progress that summit attendees have achieved towards good global governance since the summit's conception. So this brings us back to the idea of the hybrid creatures, or the mixing of human DNA with something else. And once again, this takes us all the way back to the Bible in the very beginning, when the fallen ones mated with humans. This is a narrative I've been seeing put out for many years. The idea, once again, that aliens created us. Aliens created our genetic code and signed it with the number 37, scientists say. This theory is called panspermia, and I've covered this for years. And we have seen a rise of this idea of panspermia, especially being put out in a lot of our mainstream media. This is from the article at express.uk. The Kazakhstani duo, which are the scientists, have taken this one step further and believe that life is a result of direct panspermia. Something was intentionally sent towards Earth to kickstart our life. By analyzing the genetic code, which is the set of rules which translate DNA into proteins and does not alter as it's passed down through generations, they note that the number 37 crops up several times. One instance is that this mass of the molecular core shared by all 20 amino acids is 74, which is 37 doubled. So if you didn't know already, Kazakhstan, and in particular Astana, which is the capital of Kazakhstan, is literally considered Illuminati headquarters, or a New World Order city. You see, the entire city is laid out with occult symbols, esoteric meaning, hidden messages. It's pretty fascinating. So here's just some of the images of the city, and as you can see, it's a very, very interesting looking place. I've been saying for years that the veil is lifting. Reality is shifting. And I believe we're given glimpses to things on the other side, if you will, all the time. We just have to have the eyes to see. Speaking of which, I found this interesting. This is from just a few years ago. A cloud called the Eye of God appears in the sky above Kazakhstan, a country, an area that many people believe is literally built for the New World Order, or the Illuminati. So we have scientists from a city and from an area that is filled with Illuminati symbols, if you will, occult symbolism, esoteric symbolism. And they're drawing a connection between the fallen angels, or the aliens as they say, creating humanity. Now here's a few interesting things about the number 37. According to R. Elendi, it is the individual evolution in the cosmic organization. According to fathers of the church, 37 is a symbol of the Christ. It's the symbol of the alive Word of God. To this number is thus allotted a certain dignity. There also exists an interesting relation between the numbers 37 and 666. From 666 we obtain 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18, and 18 times 37 is 666. The Nephilim were Satan's attempt to corrupt the human gene pool and thus prevent the birth of the prophesied Messiah, Jesus Christ. By making humans partly fallen angelic beings, the future Messiah could not be a kinsman redeemer for all of humanity. Therefore, the Nephilim, giants of extraordinary strength and ability, began to dominate the earth and to intermingle with human women. The Lord had wiped the world out with the great flood of Genesis 6 to preserve the last bit of pure humanity that was left. This is why we know that the idea of this hybridization is a very important one to understand. In Greek, Roman, and many other mythologies, we do see these depictions of half-human, half-animal hybrid creatures. The Minotaur, the Centaur, the Satyr are some common examples. If you look at other extra-biblical sources like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher, they state plainly that angels engaged in this sort of genetic engineering. In one of the books it's written, "And their judges and rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth, and saw it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth, all men and all animals." Now, while these sources can provide historical information, they don't hold the authority of the Bible, of course. It's possible that during the pre-flood age of the gods, this type of hybrid creature existed. It's certainly possible, I believe, and we have to remember Jesus' prophetic warning, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." So now we have stories like this. This story just came out a few days ago. Japan approves groundbreaking experiment bringing human-animal hybrids to term. When these kind of stories go mainstream, I can only wonder what's actually taking place that we're not being told. What we can know is that there's a movement afoot to, quote, play God by mankind, by these scientists, and they want to change human DNA forever. And this is against God's will. Jesus didn't die for animals, he died for humanity, and any attempt to change humans from beings from the image of God is going against the Lord's divine plan, which is redemption for humans. Satan failed at stopping the birth of the Messiah, but now he can still work to prevent the people of the earth from being saved and having eternal life. And genetic tinkering and engineering is just one of the ways to do this, I believe. Here's a story from 2 days ago, world's first ever human-monkey hybrid grown in lab in China. Here's a story from just about a month ago, mutant DNA-edited babies created by Frankenstein scientists secretly born in China. And here's a story that just came out yesterday, rat-human hybrids planned by scientists in chilling glance into the future. And I also wanted to show you this, speaking of the fingerprints of the fallen ones. It's interesting how many statues and how many little gods with little g's we find all around the world with these 6 fingers. This concludes what I wanted to show you, but it's something I've been looking into for quite a while, and again, I find this a fascinating topic. Not only do we find proof of the fallen angels, the intermingling with mankind, the giants, but we find proof of the Bible itself and biblical history. And as I've shown you in this video, the veil really is lifting, and once again we're in that cycle and we're seeing a return of a lot of these ideas. The world was going absolutely insane back in the days of Noah, and that all had to do with the intermingling of mankind with something else, something alien. So isn't it interesting that we find our scientists today trying to do the exact same thing? So I'll leave you with that for now, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you're doing well out there, okay? Take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you a little later.